Welcome everyone to the Kautilya School of Public Policy's Let's Talk Policy series. I'm Nidhi Razdan, and today we're going to talk to three eminent scientists, doctors, about COVID's impending next wave. In India, we are possibly waiting for the third wave now. We've already had two terrible rounds of COVID. The second wave in particular was particularly deadly for India, and according to the government, it may not even be over yet while we're already talking about the next wave hitting us. Now, in many parts of the world, we are seeing COVID cases rising again, even in those countries which clearly have a more vaccination than India does at the moment. If you look at the United States, for instance, there has been an uptick in cases in recent weeks. There are parts of Europe which have different strains which are emerging. The UK has, interestingly, completely opened up in the last week or so, but has actually seen a decline in the number of cases steadily over the last week or so. Remember, that's one of the countries that has actually had a fairly successful vaccination drive. So vaccination clearly holds the key. But the question for us in India today is, are we prepared for another wave? We clearly were not prepared for round two. But if another wave hits us, which it may well do in the next few months, are we ready for it? What should we do? What is the state of our vaccination drive? It gives me great pleasure today to introduce our terrific panel. We have Professor Polly Roy, the Chair of Virology at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Thank you very much, Professor. We have Dr. Joyeeta Basu, the co-founder and director of the Doctors Hub, joining us from the National Capital, and Dr. Padma Srivastava, the head of Department of Neurology at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, is with us this evening as well. Thank you so much to all of you for being with us. Let me ask you first, Professor Roy, on the issue of the second wave versus the third wave. I'm sure you're looking at the India numbers very, very closely. Are we actually out of the second wave in the first place? The other alarming statistic in India, which the government acknowledges is a concern, is that the rate at which cases have been declining in India has kind of been stuck for several weeks now. So are we really out of round two?
I think you are going down quite, that's true, absolutely, what I see in the statistics, but I don't think that you're really completely out either. It's going down, but there are certain areas. Very recently, you had a very bad wave in Kerala and Maharashtra, So it's a different pockets, you're still having some problems. But certain area, I think you have come down quite a bit. So you cannot say you are really out of the second wave already. I can't say that. Also, the calculations of the death or hospitalizations are not so really reflect the real story in India because of your tremendous situation of the rural area. So you don't know much statistics there. So I would say that you are better off than in the beginning of the year than what you had, but it is not completely out of the second wave that we are actually in the UK. This is much smaller country, it's very easy to control, much more easier than in India.
Right. Dr. Joyeeta Basu, you've been treating COVID patients now for the last year and a half, and I know you were overwhelmed with patients like so many other doctors during the second wave's peak here in India in April. How are things at the moment? In Delhi, I know the cases are at their lowest point for months, but are you seeing any changes? Are you seeing any worrying signs of a third wave or another wave, or an uptick, let's say, around the corner?
So at present, we are not seeing too many patients. Delhi is seeing about 50-60 cases per day, and Gurgaon, where I practice from, is seeing about anything between 5 to 10 cases per day. So not that many. But this is like a lull before the storm. Sometime way back in January, February, we were seeing similar number of cases. We were seeing very few cases. I think all India numbers were about 12,000, 10,000 in beginning of February. Beginning of March, it was about 20 to 30,000. And suddenly April, you know what happened. So this wave can happen anytime. The virus can turn tactics anytime. So we have to be very careful. And what I'm absolutely appalled and scared about is the way people are behaving in a non-appropriate manner, non-COVID appropriate manner. Masks are not being worn correctly, if worn at all. There's crowds at every places, there's partying going on, there are holidays. So that worries me a lot, especially at the pace of the vaccination that we have, we need to really pick up that pace. The more people get vaccinated, the chances of the third wave being, there will be a third wave, but the chances of the third wave being of a lesser intensity as compared to the second wave will be better then, the more people get vaccinated.
Dr. Srivastava, are we ready though to handle another big wave if it does come? And some doctors and experts believe that that's inevitable.
I hope so. Not that we have actually learned and we've looked at what has been the the impact of the second wave and where there has been this massive issue of mortality, the deaths happening. So in that situation, in your face, there has been a problem about the number of beds for the ICU, the medications, the oxygen. So those are, kind of in your face stuff that came out as huge limitations in terms of the healthcare delivery. And I think in those aspects, ramping up and maintaining those ramped up situations is there from what I believe. So yes, but then let me add on, Nidhi, that the second and the third wave issues, we've always had these geographic variations. And it was never one comprehensive big wave at any one place. So it was always that you had states like Kerala and Maharashtra, which have been sort of epicenters before the other areas took on. And we still have the Northeast, which is now sort of being plateaued at a high level before it's going to come down. So that was a very relevant question when you said, has really the second wave gone away at all? Said that though, again, when we are looking at preparedness in terms of healthcare delivery, we are also looking at preparedness of all of us as a societal responsibility as such. And when Dr. Basu said about the COVID appropriate behavior, the issue here is that you really don't need restrictions and lockdowns if one is inherently disciplined. These are measures to instill discipline, to enforce discipline for a COVID appropriate behavior. So I think, and again, in media, in various other forms, these are repeatedly being said that don't go out if it's not necessary. And if you do go out, then maintain this COVID appropriate behavior. Don't do things which are unnecessary and don't have this COVID fatigue. And hence, when you release something, you're releasing everything and you're coming out in the open. And now everything bhaad mein jaye, doesn't matter, I've got my freedom. So that kind of behavior probably is what is much more important to look at. And that is part of our preparedness, I think. And if we are, then it may not be a wave, it may just be a ripple. But as everybody said, that probably is an inevitable thing to happen. But it's probably in our hands to see whether it's going to be a wave or just a ripple before, things again change.
I think that's important because, yes, when you look around, you do see that kind of COVID fatigue has set in and people are just, doing whatever they want. Interestingly, Professor Roy, I mentioned the UK right in the beginning and the fact that now masks are no longer compulsory there. And in a sense, all restrictions have been lifted, almost all restrictions have been lifted. Now, how do you look at the data from the UK, the fact that the number of cases actually have been declining steadily over the past week? And what does the hospitalization data tell you? Does it tell you that being double vaccinated is very, very important? And it also comes at a time when in the US, the CDC has now revised its guidelines. Earlier, they said you don't need a mask if you're double vaccinated. Now they've just said in the last 24 hours that please do wear a mask, especially if you're indoors, whereas the UK is doing the opposite. So how would you read the data for us, Professor?
Well, first of all, if you are double vaccinated, there's a very, very little chance that you're going to get infected. Even if you get infected with a variant virus, generally it will be protective still. It will be still resistant because not the mutation doesn't happen everywhere, only few places or one place at least. And that may not be covering all the other sites that are important for making the antibody. So that is the reason that 2 doses are very important, because first dose give minimum protection. Protection does give, but minimum. The second dose will actually boost very well. And it also depends what vaccine you are taking. Now, Pfizer vaccine is very good for single dose or double dose, both very good. But you do need double doses. All these vaccines necessary for double dose. And then Pfizer, and then the AstraZeneca vaccine, which India is taking, doesn't give enough protection from the first dose. Just give the disease control, but not really virus control so much, because antibody is much lower. That's why. So it is important. In India, as far as my knowledge, not vaccinated a lot of people. We are vaccinated, 3/4 of people are vaccinated already. So we can afford this opening. Although we still, many people, including myself, will still wear mask, even though I know myself, because I tested myself with my system that I have a very good antibody because I have taken Pfizer. So the point is that you have to be careful about the virus, because virus will look for the body which is a little bit healthy that they can get into and can multiply. So generally, if their antibody is strong, they will not get in. Antibody is low, they will get in. You are immunocompromised because you have a predisposed some condition, so you will get infected some. Nevertheless, once you have one vaccine, you're still not going to multiply much high level of viruses inside. It cannot. It just can't. You will get a little bit cold and a little bit of infection. You are much less prone to transmit the virus because you cannot make larger number of virus particles. So this is the principle of the vaccination. So as far as I'm concerned, India have to structure such a way, not just in a pocket like Delhi, Calcutta, they're having, Delhi, I know many centers of vaccination going on. All over, they must try to structure such a way that people do take vaccine, don't have this resistance of the vaccine, don't have to have the problem that they don't want to take vaccine. They have to be convinced that vaccine is the only way you can go all the way out, but otherwise you don't have freedom. England is opening up, but they're also quite strict in many things. But mask is the one thing probably everybody should continue for a long time, no matter what.
Absolutely.
Because it is the simple thing to do, and it is easy to do. Even if you're in a crowd, if you wear a mask, you have a much less chance to get infecting a virus to come to your body, so you can protect yourself. So it is very important to keep the mask, not like in India and many places, they're just continuously washing hands, and that doesn't happen. It's the aerosol. So protect your nose and mouth, not mouth. People always, I see people having the nose open and mouth closed. That's no good. The nose is very important in this case. So this kind of social, in a way, people has to be, all the social activity should be including mask. Everybody should understand the mask is important for a long while. Even if you have mostly, you think it's going down, you think no, because very end will come again and again and again for a while until the whole globally we are vaccinated, because you cannot stop the people traveling here and there. You just can't stop for it too long. So that's what we're all afraid of, because it will disappear only when most of the populations are vaccinated all over globally.
And we're probably years away from that, which is the scary part.
Yes.
In fact, Dr. Basu, I wanted to ask you, because Professor Roy makes two important points. One is that it's not, single vaccination is not enough. You have to be double vaccinated, A, and B, wearing masks is something that we all will probably need to do for a very long time. Now, can I ask you, have you seen, I mean, as far as the issue of vaccine hesitancy is concerned, are you seeing more people sort of coming around to the idea that they should get vaccinated, or are you still seeing a lot of vaccine hesitancy, even in Delhi and its suburbs?
So in India, especially in Delhi and Gurgaon, I'm not seeing that much of vaccine hesitancy any longer. Initially, there was, because there were not enough studies. They thought there were not enough studies. Now, well, a lot of the people in the world have got vaccinated, and many with AZ vaccine. There's less hesitancy. More people are coming forward to get vaccinated. Unfortunately, we don't have that many vaccines available to vaccinate them. So my problem is that at present, number one. Number two, the other thing that I find is the gap between the two vaccines. I wish it was not 3 months, maybe down to 8 weeks would be a better idea, because the sooner we get everybody double vaccinated or fully vaccinated, it's better for as far as the third wave is concerned. The more people get vaccinated with 2 doses, it's better, like Professor Roy said. And
That's what the UK did. They went back to 8
that,
weeks,
yeah,
up
that,
to 12 weeks. Yeah.
that's yeah. And the third thing, we have a lot of migrant population who don't know how to use the app, which is required at present. And they also don't have that much of knowledge about walk-in centers where you can get them vaccinated. So I usually tell my patients that, get your house help, get your drivers, get your house help, get anybody who cannot has access to a vaccine. You either register them or take them to a place where they can, where it's free, where they don't need to register, where it's a walk-in drive to get vaccinated. I think that is quite a lot of population that we need to cover. The urban population, I think, is able to get vaccinated, but there are a lot of people who are the migrant population, who are the workers who have no access to Aadhaar cards or the COVID app, etc. And I think that is a big problem that we need to solve, where either we do door-to-door vaccination, either they can't come to us, we go to them. So that is the policy that we need to achieve. So you go to all the slum areas, you go to all the areas where these people are, and get the vaccine to them if they can't come to us.
Dr. Srivastava, I also was keen to ask all of you, in fact, but you in particular, about the sort of after effects of those who have had COVID and the long COVID issues that people are dealing with. I was reading the other day that there are a lot of neurological issues, in fact, that people are struggling with even months after having had COVID. And if you can tell us about that, what you're seeing, and whether that makes such people maybe more at risk to be reinfected, at a later stage. I don't know if you can shed light on that.
Okay, so in fact, now we have a lot of literature, published literature. Nidhi, in fact, we have publications even from our own center on this. One is the neurological spectrum associated with COVID as such. So, long since we know that COVID is no longer just an ILI or SARI, which is like, influenza-like illness or severe acute respiratory illness. We've seen people presenting with a neurological problem. They presented with strokes, with no fever, no cough, nothing at all, even in the first wave itself. So besides, the things that you know of, like loss of smell, loss of taste, which are part and parcel of the original list of features with which COVID presented, we've had numerous other ways of presentations, even without a fever cough. The conventional features of COVID, and this we've reported. Okay, this is published literature even from India. Now, moreover, we've also seen during admission and while they are in the hospital, and also with mild and moderate features, that they have a spectrum of neurological problems ranging from strokes, with being in various stages of encephalopathy, means being in various stages of altered senses, being in coma, getting infected. Otherwise, there are something called post-infective issues like demyelination, various varieties of neuropathies and paralysis and seizures and autoimmune things and what have you. But what you struck, you really struck the most important point as long COVID, wherein there have been a host of things. And recently we've had publication from UK itself where there are 200 odd features which have been now published as important. And that is again across the spectrum, not just nervous system, gastrointestinal, cardiac, nephrological. But the neurological features are prominent in the sense, very commonly we're seeing headaches, dizziness, fatigue, and then you must have heard of this, term called mental fog or a brain fog, this pervasive thing about confusion, inability to do this multitasking, what originally or what they were earlier used to do with with clarity and with alertity, those become sort of difficult suddenly. So there is this kind of confusion, they have in decision making. So that has been said as, there has been variously classified as executive function problem. So loosely said as mental fog or a brain fog. But more importantly, Nidhi, is these formation of clots, and whether they are in the veins or arteries, or they could form in the lungs and in the veins and various other systems, and they can form even in the brain. So you have clots in the arteries, clots in the veins, so various varieties of thrombosis, the thrombotic issues, which include stroke, of course, they have happened. And because heart and brain they're so strongly correlated, something happening in the heart, the rhythm and the muscle can affect the brain and vice versa. But currently, there's an ongoing research which is multinational, which is driven by major centers. One which we are also part of is being driven by San Antonio, Texas. So they are looking into the long-term effects. The development of degenerative issues like dementias, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, other neurodegenerative, and a host of neuropsychiatric problems in long COVID that research is on. And recently there's a publication too from UK where they looked at MRIs of brains in a registry of people pre-COVID and some who had COVID. So they did an MRI after and looked at actually shrinkage of certain areas of the brain. So this is sort of worrisome. There's no data that they would be at a greater risk of a reinfection, but the COVID effects, are they lingering on? Beyond, even in COVID survivors, are we looking at a long-term problems? That is something, and I'm not even touching the mental health issues here. Pure neurological issues itself seem to be of concern, and we are learning about it.
It's worrying also because you meet too many people who kind of dismiss COVID as the flu, and are so tired of masking up and social distancing that they're like, well, we have to live with this, so let's just find a way to do it. And they're wrong. Yeah, I mean, you're right. The long-term impact is massive. We are going to take some questions from some of our participants, and Rehan Mondal is on the panel. Rehan, would you like to please ask your question? You'll have to unmute your mic. Okay, I don't know what happened there, but hopefully we'll get Rehan, back. Professor Roy, I wanted to come back again, to this, the other issue that, India has been dealing with, which is that there was a national level sero survey that was recently conducted, which I think showed that more than 60% of the population had antibodies. Now, that has led some people to believe that that means that, we are heading towards that herd immunity. And I think that complacency is kind of kicking in, that, most of the population has now had COVID, and we're going to be okay. Apparently, that's not the case. And we need you to dispel that to those who are taking it easy, because we know that we're very much in danger of being infected by mutants.
Well, if they have enough antibody, I don't know how they're measuring this antibody level. If they're using the spike protein as an antigen to look at the antibody level, that is different. But if they're using the N protein, the nucleocapsid, which of coronavirus, which is common for all the other coronavirus, and some of the coronaviruses are circulating long time, and that doesn't cause really, those viruses don't cause any disease. However, they can develop antibody. Sometimes they're mistaken in that. For instance, SARS virus 1 have the antibody, their antibody will be recognized by the antibody of the COVID-19 will be recognized by the antigen of the SARS.
The methodology may be flawed.
Yes, because it's a very common sequence, but that doesn't mean they're protected. So if they're using actually checking the spike antigen based antibody titer, then they're very good news to hear that they have a lot of antibodies. I don't know who developed that there, but India might be using that. If the antibody is against the COVID-19 spike, then that's very good. But there is no herd immunity that easily going to develop in India. I don't believe that because, as I said, Delhi is very, very much in front, doing everything fantastically. From my relatives and friends, I understand in Delhi, but not so case, not this sort of case. Some places in Bihar, I understand nothing there. So as soon as somebody goes from, say, did not take the vaccine in Delhi, gone to Bihar, another area, they are not, they are going to be infected by those people easily. So they don't have any immunity. The reason we call herd immunity, the people who have the antibody, the people who don't have antibody, there's so minimum number, they cannot really transmit too easily to each other. That's the reason they go. But that herd immunity to develop is not easy for this virus, really. That may give you a wrong idea to people's head. They have to understand you must have the antibody against SARS-2, COVID-2 virus spike protein, not just regular anything else. So this is very important. And I'm not so keen about herd immunity because that gives a wrong idea for any country still. So it's not going to be resistant. One can argue that we heard about this long COVID, all this horrible disease they're causing for a long time. That's nothing to do virus anymore. Virus gone in 3-4 days, gone.
Yeah.
Is that their body affect differently, signaling pathways all damaged. They affect differently, and that is the problem. Everybody's differently doing it. They respond differently, and that's why we're seeing all this problem. And this is the way one have to scare the other people who are hesitant to take vaccine. Look, if you take vaccine, you may have a little bit of a reaction, a little bit of fever one day. But if you don't take vaccine, what can happen to you?
Yeah.
You know, that's what I tell to everybody.
Exactly.
Just think about that. What can happen to you? And I give you one little story that happened in England. They have this football game, everybody watching together. And then nobody wants to take vaccine there. They tested good, everything fine. One guy, young man, got the COVID, and I show in the television, show that he got so bad COVID because they think, most of the young people think, oh, I will not get it bad, in their 30s. But he is such a bad disease, he will not come out from hospital very quickly. And he is now telling everybody, take vaccine, take vaccine. So main thing that this is a bad virus. We can't do anything about it. It's a bad virus. It's going to be bad for a while. After a few years, it's going to be less and less virulent. That's for sure. It's going to be mitigated. That'll be fine. But now we have to be vaccinated. Whatever vaccine is available, they're still going to be help us against the variant virus, at least some level. So that's what I will say.
We have Shahbaz Khan, who's one of our students for the Kautilya Master's program. He's joining us. Shahbaz, please ask your question. Shahbaz, are you there? It is not our lucky day when it comes to technology today, but I'm used to this happening, so it's all right. I'm going to.
They have a question in the chat, probably.
Yeah, well, in the chat box, yes, which I'll try to get to. Someone, Jivendra Mishra, Dr. Basu has an interesting question. Is an RT-PCR test or even a rapid test, should it be mandatory for a fully vaccinated person, or can it be avoided?
In India, I think it should be mandatory. Because if you see, even a fully vaccinated person is the effectiveness, the efficacy of the AZ vaccine is about 66% in a fully vaccinated person. So I think RT-PCR test is mandatory for travel, for moving from state to state, for taking a flight. It is absolutely mandatory. I would say yes, they need it. I would also like to add, Dr. Roy talked about the herd immunity and the sero surveys that we had. We had a similar sero survey way back in January, February, where people said, we've developed herd immunity. Also, that was to the alpha variant, not the delta variant. So the moment there is a change, there is a variant which comes up, which is a variant of concern, or a variant which becomes like the delta variant, the whole sero survey thing, I think, turns on its head. And you get exposed again. Of course, we didn't have any vaccines at that time. We have vaccines now. So more reason for people to get vaccinated. So even if there is a vaccine, a variant which is not going to be, which is, which might show breakthrough infections, but even then it would help in reducing the severity of the cases and help in preventing hospitalization.
Right. In fact, there's another question for you, actually, Dr. Basu. Nurul Shabazz, who's a lecturer from Kashmir, where I'm from, he's asking, how do you think we can overcome vaccine hesitancy? And, is it the government's responsibility to cover people who live in the higher reaches? Like, for instance, in the Kashmir Valley, there's so many people who are living in remote, very cut off areas. So how do we sort of address that? I mean, you kind of address that by saying, if they don't come to you, you go to them.
Yeah. So door-to-door vaccination, I think the government is trying quite hard to go to remote areas of Kashmir. I read that a couple of weeks ago that it was going to remote areas of Kashmir and trying to do vaccination, holding vaccination camps in different areas. So definitely that will have to be there. And vaccine hesitancy needs to be addressed by the local people, by the local politicians of Kashmir, by the local people of influence over there. That's the one way to address vaccine hesitancy. We also have to debunk a lot of vaccine myths. We have to keep reiterating this time and again every single day till it reaches a point where every person is convinced that the vaccine is the thing which will help us, stop the COVID from forging ahead.
I think it doesn't help when you have some, and I shouldn't say this having been in the media, but the sensationalist headlines about a couple of blood clots out of, say, millions of people who've got vaccines, and that becomes the headline, and that gets played up more than the fact that so many other millions of people have taken it and they're all right. And I think part of the problem is the way the media does its messaging on this, which is a separate debate altogether.
I have an issue with, I wish the government I'm sorry for interrupting, the government has quite a bit hold of the media, and maybe the government should tell the media to debunk these myths and not sensationalize these kind of theories going around.
That's true, but it's not just our media that's doing it. I've seen it in the Australian press.
I'm talking about all media.
Yeah. Well, ours, of course, there are different types of media, but certainly many that are friendly to the government. Dr. Srivastava, Pavan Kaipa has a question with regard to these various myths that are floating around, that the third wave would affect children more. Is that still a valid concern, or is it, or do we just not know, frankly?
So yes, this was raised again, and we saw that more often in media again than in other scientific circles, that the third wave would come and the third wave would hit children most. And so we also saw some statements that the pediatric ICUs are being built, and later on, the last of the thing, in fact, there was this announcements also which have been made by the scientific bodies across our own country, which said that for reasons more than one, the children may not be that very susceptible. The pediatric population need not be more susceptible, and that they get more severe infection in a third wave, especially since the original, the logic was, look, the adults got vaccinated, this cohort did not get vaccinated, so this is going to hit them, and it'll hit them real hard. But then this has slowly gone away. And I think anyway, we're still on a learning curve. But as it stands, Nidhi, I don't think that statements hold a lot of water right now, that it is only the children and they will be really hit badly. So I think at this point of time, I know that even from Indian Council of Medical Research, there have been some announcements which have come in, that according to certain science and logic, it is not true that the pediatric population will be hit really hard. It's not true that way. In fact, that's the reason there's been this also a thing to move on and open up the primary schools, before they go on to the adolescents, because that's where it starts. So I think there is some science behind taking those decisions. I'm not an expert, Nidhi, but from whatever I know from the published part of it, doesn't seem true that it is the youngest of the lot who's going to be really hit hard in the third
So you
wave.
are in favor of
Said,
opening schools gradually and starting with primary school?
yes, that is what is being now mooted, so that we now come on to a steady lane where we need to now have a green light for our lives also on the track, and at the same time being COVID appropriate and keep the virus in check. So both now need to run parallel, since now we know now that we to live with this kind of a situation, as Professor Roy said, for a long time. So we have to get our economy back on track, get the schooling and training back on track, get a lot of mental health issues back on track, because lives become a standstill for reasons more than one. And that, as everybody is saying, vaccinate and have the COVID appropriate behavior, which is the other vaccine that we have as an armamentarium, that is the biggest ammunition we have, get on with our lives. Yes.
Dr. Basu, do you support that, the gradual reopening of schools as well? And I think what a lot of parents are worried about is that given that kids are not vaccinated at all yet in India, is there a safe way to do it? And what would that be in your view?
Absolutely agree. We need to get on with our lives. And as Dr. Srivastava has said, we need to start with the primary section, the younger age group. We need to start with that because they are not the ones who are going to get badly affected with the virus or take it home. So they were the ones that we need to start with. Also, the other thing that I would like to tell you is that that age group needs more instead of online education, they need to come to school and have a proper education. The older children can do the online education. For them, it's all right, not for the younger children, because I think they're missing out. And again, there's going to be a huge divide in India between the urban and the rural students and rural age group people. In the urban, the mothers are educated. They'll be able to teach the children at home, and they'll be able to take care of the education part of it. Whereas in the rural part, where the mothers may not be as educated or not be as familiar with technology as in the urban areas, I think there will be a lot of gap in education. So they'll have a fallout over there. So we need to start that primary age group in both urban and rural areas. And yes, make them wear masks. I think everybody now understands COVID is there. You have to wear a mask. Children can be pretty well disciplined. They know, they understand self, and they are self-disciplined. I think they're pretty good at it.
And they wear nice, colorful, Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse masks. Yeah.
Yeah,
those are actually quite nice.
Yeah.
So Basu has a sort of in a way related question, and I'll ask Professor Roy if she could like to take this. That how can the corporate environment or offices, I think, cope with this new normal? So in a way, Professor Roy, is it that work from home or this hybrid model of partly working from home or going back to the office physically, is that here to stay now for the foreseeable future?
Well, for UK, it looks like they are the university people generally, senior professors are staying at home, except me. I go all the time because I'm a lab-based scientist. I educate a lot of postdocs and PhD students, and I like to be very much close to them to make sure that they understand what they're doing. But in my university and other universities, many professors senior don't go, and only the postdocs, the researcher, lab-based people are going. But for our admin people, are never coming, which is also hurting us quite a bit. I mean, this is not the way to run the facility. So I would say the hybrid system will be, but probably now more at home and few at work coming. It's going to be different. It will be probably more at work and less at home people. I think also one gets tired to stay at home all the time. I mean, no matter who it is. I mean, you like to work with the people. You don't want to be alone in an office stuck, I don't like it at all. I come only for 1 day or 2 days at home to work from here. But generally, it's a regular going and discussing. And like we are discussing with you, I mean, I would love to have you all together here, round table, that we can discuss than the Zoom. But right now we have no possibility to do that sort of thing. However, I think the hybrid system will run for a while in many countries, not only UK or India, but everywhere else also, because that's, as long as we don't have everyone vaccinated, it's going to be like that for a while. And
Yeah.
then probably slowly, people will get tired to stay at home and they will come. But students, I think it's very important
To
to
get
be
back.
taught face to face, not like that. You cannot give them enough that way.
Can I
It's
ask
not
you,
possible.
Professor Roy, another question that's often asked here now, which is about the mixing of vaccines. Now, we're seeing this in Canada, we've seen it in Germany and some other places where there's a first shot of AstraZeneca followed by an mRNA vaccine, and
Yes.
some studies are claiming that that has a greater antibody response. The WHO, however, the other day has warned against mixing vaccines without proper studies in place, which of course is legitimate. How do you look at this issue of mixing vaccines? I mean, is that actually...
Well, much before the vaccination started, I already told that you have to do mix match. This is the way it has to be done. I've been working with many different animal vaccines trials myself, and I know that if you do mixing two different types, particularly for this AstraZeneca or adenovirus-based vaccine, Johnson and Johnson's or Sputnik V vaccine. You see, the Sputnik V vaccine made two different kind of adenovirus vector-based vaccine. So they are much better off than the adenovirus-based that we have or Johnson Johnson has. So if you do the RNA-based vaccines and the adenovirus vector-based vaccine mismatch, you are going to get much better booster because they will not recognize the delivery system second time. That is the reason it is essential to mix match. We're going to get much better antibody titer. WHO are always cautious about everything because they have to deal with globally, so that's why. But I myself advise in WHO mRNA vaccines and DNA-based vaccine. So RNA vaccine, Pfizer vaccine, on the other hand, or Moderna vaccine, it will come in America. They can use the same vaccine twice, they will be fine. But anything you have vector-based, also in India, inactivated vaccine, the Bharat Biotech made, or China have Sinovac, same way. Those has to be mixed match between, and they'll be much better off in India, particularly if they mix match their AstraZeneca-based vaccine versus Bharat Biotech-based inactivated vaccine. They'll be much better both ways.
Yeah, which means I think because we still don't have Moderna and Pfizer here. They're still fighting over the indemnity issues. But I guess those who've had 2 doses of AstraZeneca already may be potentially looking at a booster dose down the line,
yes,
which hopefully would be an mRNA vaccine like Pfizer or Moderna,
yes,
which, as you
yes,
said, would provide a much better response.
No, because if they get another adenovirus like AstraZeneca again, they're not going to boost well at all, because I know the chemistry. That's what I know. It will not happen. So if they take another vaccine, say Johnson and Johnson one, maybe they get some, but best way to do those people is the RNA based, or even your inactivated virus that you have in India.
Which makes you wonder why the government of India didn't order these vaccines when they were supposed to, when they wanted to come to India in the first place. But again, that is another chapter in history, which we will.
It's political. It's all this politics.
Yeah,
I'm a scientist. I don't pay attention on those.
It affects our health. So, I think as citizens, it is beyond regular politics. But anyway, there's a question from Shanice Ranade, Dr. Basu, if you want to take this, that how safe are the vaccines available in India for pregnant women? I know this must be a question you're often asked. What is your feedback?
So at present, the government, the ICMR has said that the vaccines are safe to be taken by pregnant women and by lactating mothers. It's absolutely safe to be taken. Word of caution, however, if I would say take the vaccine, we advise all people to take pregnant expecting mothers to take the vaccine in the second trimester. So I would just tell them to wait for the second trimester and take it after this, in the second trimester or after that, and not in the first trimester. That's the only about other thing. And if they have any underlying comorbidities, then they should discuss with the gynecologist before taking the vaccine. Otherwise, I'm all for it. Definitely, yes.
I like the question that Rehan has asked, and I'll ask Dr. Srivastava if she wants to take it. When is the third wave actually coming?
So I think it's the guests and the guests and another guest. So there have been a lot of models and the mathematical models, and we have had the Sutra model and others from which have been then and said that the Sutra model of the prediction of second wave was almost accurate. So about the third wave and so on and so forth. Somebody said September, October, some say November, and some say even earlier. But I'm not looking at when it is going to strike. I'm looking at the fact that whenever it is going to strike, I'm prepared for it. So I think that should be the more of a thing, and not that, oh, okay, it's going to strike now in October, so I have time till October. That should not be the message to go on. So forget about when it is going to strike or when it is going to come. The action is now: get vaccinated and adopt and keep the COVID appropriate behavior. That should be the motto, and not look for when is it going to get predicted. And if that prediction is, a lot of people have this October, November, oh, okay, it is early next year, whatever it is, and then say, then we have that much of time, so we are free to do what we can. So I don't think that should be important at all, Nidhi. As far as I'm concerned, I think as responsible citizen, forget about predictions. Do what you have to do now. And I think, Professor Roy, won't you agree with me? Dr. Basu, won't you agree with?
I would absolutely.
Absolutely.
Waves. It's not just about the third wave. There will be a fourth wave. We have to ensure that we don't see the spike that we had in the second wave. We need that wave to be, like ma'am said, as a ripple. It should be a ripple. It should be more people get vaccinated, more people have COVID appropriate behavior. The ripple, it will be a ripple where people don't get hospitalized. They are able to manage it better. Like Dr. Srivastava said, we need to manage that.
My recommendation would be, as a non-doctor, would be get a haircut now when cases are still low, so that if there is a lockdown again, then you can deal with those issues, because God knows people have struggled with little things like this, and that does make you, that does make little things begin to bother you over a period of time, that you can't do this, you can't do that. My final question to all of you is, what is safe for us to do when there are relatively low cases, in the sense that, for instance, Dr. Basu, would you advise people coming together in an indoor space in large numbers at this point when cases are relatively low? Or would you say we should still avoid at this time those things, or, even dinner parties, make sure we're double masked? What do you think are the do's and don'ts as we also try to get on with our lives?
So first of all, if you want to meet up with people, all of y'all should be doubly vaccinated and 2 weeks after your second dose, number one. Number two, if you're going to be eating and drinking, the mask come off. So for me, that's a big problem. So you do it in an outdoor area, or you do it in a terrace. If it's an indoor area, not more than 4 to 6 people in a room, and with the ventilation, with good ventilation. Keep all your doors and windows open. It's hot in Delhi. It's humid in Delhi. Everybody's in their air conditioning room. So I'm not very comfortable when the air conditioners are on and all the doors and windows are shut, and there are too many people in a room. So my 2 bits is they have to be doubly vaccinated. They have to be 2 weeks after their second vaccine, not more than 4 to 6 people in a room which is well ventilated. If you're outdoors, then you can have a larger number. Again, everybody vaccinated 2 weeks after the second vaccine. Open air, not that much of a problem. Within a room, I have a problem with that.
All right. I think that's sensible advice all around. I think all the panelists would agree that is sensible advice to follow. Please be doubly vaccinated. And even after you're doubly vaccinated, as Professor Roy also stressed earlier, try to keep your mask on as much as possible, especially when you are going into spaces with other people, because I think what makes COVID different from other diseases is that it's not yourself that you're protecting, not just yourself, but you have a responsibility to protect others around you, given that you may get a mild infection, but someone you infect may actually die from it. So I think we have a greater responsibility to everybody around us. I'd like to thank all of you very much for taking out the time to join us here at the Kautilya School of Public Policy. Thank you so much for your insights and for your advice.